Okay, I'm going to call our village board meeting for April 3rd, 2023 to order. Roll call, please.
Nyla Fry. Here. Gary Hersberg.
Here.
Phil Willems.
Here.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Aaron Moran. Here. Joe Zisselsberger.
Here.
Sam Kaufman.
Here. Okay, first item is confirmation of open meeting compliance, public postings, official notices, and online availability.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 3/31/23. The final agenda was posted in all three official posting locations on 3/30/2023, and the final agenda and packet were made available online on 3/30/2023. Two important things for the audience members is please make sure you sign in on the sign-in sheet with your name, address, and municipality for accurate record keeping. And those interested in participating for public comment, please fill out the public comment form and hand them to me prior to the agenda item. Thank you.
Okay, then let's move on to our public comments. Is there anyone here who'd like to make any comments to the village board this evening? Any papers turned in?
No.
Okay, I have a couple comments to make tonight. One, I want to thank Phil for running the meeting last time for me in my absence. Two, for those who sent me well wishes for, I had surgery this past March. Thank you for those well wishes. And then third, there's been some information shared on social media in the news in regards to our library and a situation that happened. And I want to first commend Eric and Todd and then the library board for the work that they did to get information out to the public. I'm going to share that with everyone tonight. Hopefully if people watch this on TV, they'll hear it. But it's important that we have great communication and our library board. Todd and Eric did a great job of getting this out, as I said. So just wanted to share, I'm not reading the whole letter, but parts of it. This is in regards to some books where they were placed. And I'm not here to judge any of our residents, because you can have different opinions on what your feelings are with everything. And it's important that people know that our library board makes the policies for the library and what happens with it. The village board does not. We provide funding and make sure, but we're here to support in the event the library board needs us. So the official statement regarding misinformation about children's collection. This is it. The Waunakee Public Library is concerned and disappointed about recent misrepresentations of its policies and staff, as put forth by contributors to various local social media blog outlets. Sorry if I have a little problems reading tonight, just because of air in the situation for me right now. So I'm doing my best. Specifically, assertions have been made that the library is grooming children and that sexually explicit materials are currently available at the library's children's section. Further, the claim was made and then repeated by others that the library's youth services manager said the words, "The library isn't meant to be a safe space for all." The Waunakee Public Library categorically denies these claims. To offer greater factual context, in June 2022, the library had a display featuring LGBTQ pride literature in conjunction with the Village of Waunakee's recognition of Pride Month. A patron objected to the display contents, correctly noting that one book in particular was mistakenly displayed in the incorrect location. That item was relocated immediately to the proper display, and the patron was thanked for bringing it to our attention. The library's youth services manager followed up with 30+ minute phone conversation with that patron. After the shelving error was acknowledged, the patron also expressed objection to the library displaying any items featuring LGBTQ themes or topics. The librarian correctly stated that the library cannot guarantee that patrons would not find materials on library shelves that they may find personally objectionable, regardless of location or intended audience. The librarian further explained that the library is obligated to build a collection that represents all who make up our community. At no time did the youth services manager imply that the library was somehow not a safe space for children and people of all ages and backgrounds. What the patron chose to do with their version of the conversation is unknown. However, a blog post was written by an anonymous author months after the original phone conversation had taken place. As adopted by the library board, our staff diligently follows the materials selection and collection development policy. According to the policy, the Waunakee Public Library supports the individual's rights to have access to ideas and information representing all points of view. The Board of Trustees of the Waunakee Public Library has adopted the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights. The bill reads, "The American Library Association affirms that all libraries are forums for information and ideas, and that the following basic policies should guide their services." Section 1, books and other library resources should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people of the community the library serves. Materials should not be excluded because of the origin, background, or views of those contributing their creation. 2, libraries should provide materials and information presenting all points of view of current and historical issues. Materials should not be prescribed or removed because of partisan or doctrinal disapproval. The Waunakee Public Library's material selection and collection development policy echoes the ALA's Bill of Rights by stating the library recognizes the choice of library materials by library users is an individual matter, and some materials may be deemed inappropriate or offensive by patrons. While an individual may reject materials for themselves, they cannot exercise censorship to restrict access to the materials by others. The policy goes on to explain the responsibility of parents or legal guardians in regards to their child's reading choices. The policy states responsibility for the reading of children rests with their parents or legal guardians. At no time will the library staff act in loco parentis. Selection of library materials will not be inhibited by the possibility that materials may come in to the possession of children. Library staff remain diligent in the proper placement of materials. Items are shelved in age-appropriate collections as determined by the publishers and producers of those materials. The Waunakee Public Library stands by selections as per the library's collection development and material selection policy. Should any item be found to be placed incorrectly for any reason, quick action is taken to relocate the item to the proper location, as was done with the initial interaction in June of 2022. Library staff and the youth manager in particular have been unfairly and inappropriately criticized as a result of the misinformation that has been shared. Phone calls and emails, many of which have been anonymous, have been intentionally hurtful, with several questioning if our staff are safe to be around children. Fortunately and thankfully, many in the Waunakee community have communicated their support to the library staff. Those who have come to know the library team are quick to appreciate their caring hearts and minds. These dedicated public servants will continue to do what they do best, show great dedication to the Waunakee community and all who patronize your public library. So I'm just going to reiterate the board's support for our library and its staff, not only them, but to our public works staff, our EMS, our fire, and I can go on a list of all the different departments. We support all of our employees, the policies that are generated. We don't make all the policies for our locations. We don't do the EMS. We don't do the fire. We don't do utilities. They have their own commissions that take care of those. We are here in a support manner for them from a financial and to guide. So I'm sure all the rest of the board members are in agreement, but I just wanted to make sure that we are also showing our support for our librarians and our library board, Eric and Todd.
Well done.
Okay. So let's move from there to our consent. I'm sorry, was there anybody else that wanted to make a public comment on the board or Todd?
I can just confirm that we don't, we have one attendee, that's somebody here for an item specifically on the agenda. So no other comments, no participants on Zoom.
All right, thank you. Okay, next we have our consent agenda. Would anybody like anything pulled, or I'd look for a motion?
I will move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion by Sam Kaufman, second by Joe Zutzelberger. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. I'll remind all our board members to make sure they have their microphones on when you're doing your votes. Thank you. First item under business item, discuss and take action on Village Hall Office Area Remodeling Project and Phase 2 Design Services. Todd, I'm assuming you're taking this?
I am, but I'm in partnership here with Becky Brown. And you might be able to pull that up on the screen, Jared. Becky is joining us via Zoom tonight. Becky, you should be able to chime in. Can we hear you?
Yes. Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Becky. Becky is with CBI and has been working with us on the project to, well, first of all, work on this room here. And this room sets a bit of a theme for what's going to continue, or we're proposing to continue through the rest of our office space here, particularly the carpet. This is the carpet that will continue. That I can assure you. I'm going to share my screen with everyone. And while I do, Becky, is there anything you want to share in terms of maybe just to outline the process that we've gone through to engage staff and the team in developing the concept that the board has in their packet and that I'll have on the screen shortly?
Yeah, fair. So you guys have seen our work so far a couple times come up, and as per usual, we've done our sort of what we consider a design phase one, where we interviewed with Todd and several of the village members to be able to understand the programming needs for the space, which includes staffing, the flow, how the public will move through the space, what needs we would need to consider for security, and sort of like the future of how this space in particular can continue to service the village staff as well as the public as they come in and kind of see this through several years to come. So we have done a full assessment of the facility, meaning verifying what is there currently and looking at what modifications would need to be made, either just from a finish upgrade or architecturally what would need to change, as well as furnishing. So this test fit kind of brings us up to speed and captures what the village feels would suit them well into the future. And you can kind of see here some proposed modifications. So Todd, I don't know if you'd like me to walk through the whole thing or if it's been reviewed prior.
Yeah, I think I'll touch on highlights, Becky,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
you can chime in if that'll help.
Yeah.
So there are some elements of this, and we're only talking about this floor of the building.
Mhm.
I'll touch on, there's some elements that are not changing and quite a few that are. I'll note that there's parts of the building, especially if you walk around the carpet, you can start to see it's frayed through to the floor beneath. I can also share that all the modular equipment we have, the cubicle equipment, the cubicle desks, the cubicle walls. Bill, those are from, where do we reuse those? Those were hand-me-downs from, I'll just share, if you lean on one the wrong way, it's liable to fall over. But they have certainly lived their life. Becky, I think you and your team
Mhm.
agree with that.
Mhm.
So the focus was certainly on accommodating our growing staff and improving the facility for them, but also on security, as Becky mentioned. So with that in mind, let's start, and I'm going to zoom in on the front lobby. I'd add that this is probably, this may be version 8, Becky, of our work on this. We did a lot of tweaking to come up with something that would be really, really useful for our function here. So pointing out the lobby area, the lobby does shrink in size. I will share that it is, my team is here. It's rare that we see this lobby full with folks. I think as some transition has been made to electronic licensing procedures and other electronic forms of doing business, we've seen it reduce even further. But we don't think that this size, we think that this size we're proposing here is effective. Now, from a perspective in this room, if you were to look at the, let's see, the stanchion just to the right of the clock, and then you take that and make a wall to the existing desk, that's where the main desk reception would be shifted to give you some perspective. Now, what we've added here in the 3 public service areas, one being finance and the court, both remain in their current locations, with the new location pressed up further here. All our full height security bulletproof glass engagement spaces where our staff will work with those who we're serving. We still have a seated spot for accessible access. You can see that with the chair seat there. And then instead of a part wall and sort of wide open element, we've shifted the door to kind of be straight where that chair is in the lobby now. I know if you're watching on television or the recording, you're not picking up on some of these specifics, but I think this is helping the board. But where that chair, the seated area is at the lobby, push that straight back just a few feet and you'll have a full height door and wall controlled access point to enter the rest of the building. So from the desk areas, there'll be a push button access control that will afford access to people who are allowed to come beyond that space, or with your key card security access. I will also note that the lobby area, along with all the exterior door entrances, will have security cameras added. So Bill's worked on a proposal, and we'll have security cameras with real-time monitoring and recorded activity. Let's see. So that is the main lobby. I just want to pause there because I mean that's an important place of activity for us in our engagement. Are there any questions about that space? And Becky, if I screwed any of that up, do help out there.
Perfect. You're spot on.
In light of the stuff up in Green Bay, are the cameras going to have an audio component to them or not?
I would look to Bill on that question. Bill, you'll have to go to the mic and make sure the button is green.
No, we didn't look at audio at this point.
Thank you. I think it was up in Green Bay that they had put cameras into their public building and it had an audio recording component. And ultimately they ended up turning it off.
Did it cause issues or concerns for them? I don't know the story either.
Yeah, I don't remember all the specifics on it, but I think they were just sort of concerned that they were being recorded walking through a hallway or whatever, that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. So with that, let's just go straight then through into the clerk's office. So what we have essentially prepped for here is, as we continue to grow and develop and see greater staff impacts, I'll share that our current deputy clerk, who's a very busy staff person under Carla, also doubles as our main desk, you could say reception, administrative assistant sort of role, engagement person. That there will be a time within the next few years when we might suggest that we look at a reception opportunity there. So the way this is arranged now, it essentially affords the chance for Lynn, who's our deputy clerk, to sort of work both of these spots. But when we do have the need for more full-time reception work, that will become primary for that person. And then Lynn will relocate to this, which is listed as a spare office as a result of this redesign. Except for some furniture replacements, chair replacements, things like that, and some of the offices that aren't being changed. That would be, the clerk's office is unchanged in terms of size and scale. The engineering inspection space is redesigned, giving a lot more space for our staff there. In particular, Tracy, who is one of the busiest people on the planet. We actually take from what is currently in a back corner closet near my office, we bring the plotter that Tracy uses a lot for scanning large documents and plans, and we incorporate that into her larger office workspace. Then she engages with the inspection team, our contract inspectors, and they're still engaging with one another right here. This affords space for two. It's not unusual that we have two inspectors here at a time. They have these workstations to work from, and then engineering interns that we have over the course of the summer. Bill's office, Public Works Director, is unchanged here, but what we do is take what's currently two offices and create three. In particular, that accommodates our deputy administrator position, who serves as our HR manager. That with that function in mind, this is an important office to have closed door capabilities, confidential conversation capabilities. So that is arranged there, along with Tim Semen, our community development director, and then village engineer. We swapped offices with those two because the village engineer reports directly to the public works director. And the space here, the reworked workstation here, is for Kylie West, who essentially is of service to both the community development director, the deputy administrator, and then myself as administrator. So she's positioned well to serve those three offices as executive assistant. I did a lot of talking right there. So I'm gonna take a pause. What you will see not on this plan is some of the built-in cabinets, drawers that are built into this wall here.
Mhm.
And then also this wall here. I can say we're looking forward to doing better with our document maintenance and upkeep. There's a lot of things we can get rid of. Many of those are actually empty already, so we can make better use of space by removing those built-ins. But I'm going to take a pause on that space. Becky, is there anything you want to add to the work that you did in design there? Oh,
No, I
we
think-
did.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm gonna say the plotter used to be stored right here. We
Mhm.
maintain a closet for storage of things like our reams of paper,
Mhm.
paper supplies. Those are maintained in still a closet, but a smaller space so we can accommodate the 3 offices there.
Mhm.
Copy work area unchanged. The court clerk is still going to work from this space, but with that more secure access point and dealing with the clients who she works with. And then the finance department, we're making better use of the space. Right now, there's kind of no man's land back here against the window. It's sort of our collection space for unused cardboard boxes. If anybody is moving, that's a good place to find boxes. But we're able to move those back, those workstations back against that wall. This is the location for the deputy finance director. Currently, we're interviewing candidates, I think, next week for that position. So we're looking forward to that position being added along with the existing finance admin position. Renee's office isn't changed in terms of layout, but with some furniture, new chair, et cetera. This gives us a lot of space by bumping those back for greater work zones. And we do keep a couple options for some desk areas if we have future staff additions or maybe an intern that is serving us over a portion of the year. We have some desk area that can be utilized there. That is kind of the gist of it. I already talked about those security features and enhancements with cameras. We've engaged our IT consultant to make sure we're addressing computer connectivity. We're going to be switching to, as far as delivering the network signaling to all of our computers, we're going to switch to a completely wireless system for that. They won't be running Cat 6 around the building any longer. And we're also looking at some options for phone connectivity so we can operate perhaps more seamlessly from our computers instead of a desktop phone, but that is still in review. We have budgeted accordingly for the full scope of those improvements, but they're under review exactly to see what will work best. That's why you see a min and max number proposal in the draft budget. So I'll pause there. That's the scope of the project. Becky, is there anything else you care to add about the design?
I think from a layout and functionality, Todd, you've covered it. As far as the scope and the finished upgrades, I mean, carpeting, we were looking throughout. Once we remove some of that built-in casework, we have a lot of wall patch, paint, sort of like matching existing conditions to be working through. Looking to rework the main lobby area to maintain the same aesthetics. So we have a lot of woodwork up there to be able to reutilize and hopefully bring into the detailing. The furniture upgrades, the current furniture and electrical is pretty antiquated. Todd now touched on the Cat 6, but we'll providing new furniture will allow us to upgrade the power to the furniture and make sure that's new. Work really well. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Becky and I may have said it already, but we did have probably 2 work sessions with village staff along with
Mhm.
Becky's designer, Leah, had individual meetings with each department to talk about their specific needs and concerns and wishes for the space. So I want to pause and answer any questions you have about the design, the facility layout as proposed.
Nyla?
One of my questions is, how long do you think into the future will this work?
That's a good question. What we haven't touched is our basement. While that's not a spectacular place to arrange any department for that matter, it is an option should we continue to grow. And for a function to be located in the lower level would be a logical next step.
So, when I look at the plans, is the break room staying the same size it is now?
Yeah, another good question. We have, I guess, what we call a kitchenette, a little mini break room. What we actually want to do with some of our larger leftover partitions is create a larger space in the lower level where there currently is, it's kind of a kitchen. It's got a microwave with a dial on it. We hope to make some improvements there for a larger, more comfortable space for staff to get away from their desk for lunch. And then
Bigger space downstairs for a break area, because it's good to get away from everything going on in the office when you're an employee and be able to go someplace a little bit, away from everything.
you read our minds. I would say Georgette's lunches smell great when she puts them in the microwave. I'll miss that. But yes, thank you. That's a good point. And we hope to make better use of the lower level kitchen area.
Okay, and will it be set up downstairs too, so we can continue having committee meetings down there as we have sometimes at this point?
Yeah, actually, we're with Becky's help and AVI's help. Our lower level is arranged better than ever for that very use. In fact, we now are able to run simultaneous. If there was another committee that needed to meet the night that this room was being used for something, they could run a live Zoom meeting from the lower conference room now.
Okay, and then one other question. Will there be things that will be kept as far as furniture goes, such as any filing cabinets, et cetera, or are you anticipating getting everything new?
Well, I'll say I did give Becky the speech. Hey, we're not looking for gold plated everything here. What can we keep? What can we make use of? And we're doing as much of that as is reasonably possible. Becky, do you have a guess on sort of what percentage we're reusing versus getting rid of?
60-40, 60 new, maybe 40 reuse. I mean, there's quite a bit of reuse, I feel.
Okay, thank you.
Sam?
In terms of items that we're getting rid of that are still usable, are we going to be donating those to like Habitat Restore or an organization like that where they could potentially be reused?
Bill could maybe talk about we have an obligation to follow a formal policy related to reuse or getting rid of materials. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, right now, when we have stuff we're getting rid of, we send it to Wisconsin Surplus, it's an auction site down in Mount Horeb. And that's most likely where actually everything would probably end up.
Right. What I will add, though, is before we did that with some of the furniture after doing this room, I sent emails to the chamber, the school district, and other village departments, letting them know what we had and if they'd like any of them. The chairs, including the famous sinking chair or two that we used to have here, are now in the chamber's office. They're using that around their boardroom table. So we do try to just disperse it around the community if people think they can make use of it.
I was very happy to see security cameras in the proposal. It was a random thought that just popped in my head, and sure enough, Todd told me this was coming. Just given the number of documents and information that we're storing in this building, I think it's extremely important that we have enhanced security features.
Gary?
Bathrooms are good. Anything needs to be done to the bathroom?
Yeah, Becky, what sort of research did you look at with restroom facilities?
Yeah, so right now they're not in the scope. Leah actually was just messaging Leah. We can take a look at it again. We're not planning to refresh or do any work in there at current. The fixture counts are good, but at the moment they're planning to stay as is.
I guess what I would, as an aside to that, you'll see that I think we've arranged a scenario here with our draft budget, even at the highest end of estimate. We have funds remaining in the land sale proceeds. That is our funding source for this project. If there's an enhancement that the board cares for us to consider, we could take a look at some of the
I just wanna make sure that like the restrooms and maybe the break room, they have a water filler, a bottled water filler and those all the things that. Packing a lot of people in an area here, you wanna make sure they have decent amenities with it.
Joe?
We have nothing. It looks very good.
Oh, feels good. Joe?
So for Tracy's area, the engineering admin space, that sort of creates, at least in my mind, kind of a wall separating the rest of the organization from the village clerk. Is there any concern about that?
Well, it's not dramatically different than the current arrangement. We're still talking mid-height partitions. So I think there's still a lot of interactivity between spaces.
I'm
Is
thinking more
it the
traffic
front
flow.
corner, maybe towards reception where you're thinking?
Yeah, just more of a traffic flow issue,
Oh,
kind of what I'm looking at.
did you want to talk about that?
I was just gonna chime in that where Lynn's gonna be sitting, where it says deputy clerk, we did try to, because the flow of the traffic now comes behind her where she's working. And so when people come and talk at that half door, it gets kind of loud for her and she can't always concentrate on the phone, or if she's working on election materials, it is distracting. So that's why when Todd suggested we move that door over to the center of the lobby space, that should deter some of the traffic flow from coming behind her and to keep it a little bit quieter. Otherwise, most of the time people will go through the center.
Okay.
You know, I think the only thing to note is that, let's say the building inspectors or Carla need to make their way to the copy machine. There's a chance that traffic might go in and around that deputy or reception desk. So that
Yeah. feels a
that's
little
noted.
inconvenient.
We probably, Becky and Leah and I probably attempted 4 or 5 different scenarios or arrangements for that desk, even bringing up as an L against the window itself. And we just had trouble coming up with
Sure.
the best arrangement. This ended up being the best.
Okay. The only other things, and maybe you're going to get to them yet, would be the timing of when this happens, how long does it take, that sort of thing. And then sort of what is the process for continuing to serve the public during that, that time.
Well, I'll let Becky talk about process from here and potential timing as she sees it.
Okay. So if following tonight's meeting, there is the proposal out for what we consider a design phase 2. That moves us through formatting all architectural drawings, the construction documents, preparing those documents for the village to do, solicit bids. At that point, so that we probably have about another month or so to get through that work if approved, to be able to then, turn over for the bidding process, which would take, depending on how long you guys want to have this out for solicitation, we're probably another 6 weeks, I'd say, by the time the bids are prepared, they go out, they're reviewed, you award a bidder. We haven't put together a construction schedule yet, Todd, I guess. But knowing that the building will be occupied and serving the public, I would think that we're going to be looking at some phasing, potentially some after hours work. So that can all go into the RFP structure.
Yeah, I think I did see some notes in what you had drawn up, Becky, that talked about some plasticking off certain sections as needed, keeping in mind that we do have the lower level of the building that we can make use of in short term. I'd add that several of our staff members got pretty good working remotely when they were forced to. And if we have to do that for a short term temporarily, that might be all right, it's going to be a loud day at Village Hall. They're ripping out walls. Okay, staff who can reasonably work remotely, maybe that's a good day to do it. So I think we can coordinate that with the contractors reasonably.
Okay, and then actually one other question that came to mind, we've got security glass specified for a couple of spots over there. As far as this room, I'm not sure. I think this is just normal glass in here. Is there any plans to replace that or? anything like that?
It is not in the proposal. I think that It could be. I
Mhm.
would add, though, that when we're running public meetings, that door has to stay open
Sure.
legally.
Yep.
Open public meeting, open doors. So you weigh what do that many panes of bulletproof do for us when that in this setting has to be like
Sure.
that?
I guess I'd be more concerned with probably the last three sections here as well as that door. Still having access.
Okay. Oh, good question. We've talked about this at a staff level as well, and we thought during the day when this room is not in use, we may plan on keeping this door as the secure door. Not public access into here. So that would be like a second point. This being the first point
Sure.
of security.
Okay.
Does that make more sense?
Yeah, I guess for the most part.
Yeah.
There's the Cadillac solution and, and then there's reality of what we can afford to do and that sort of thing. So, no, we're good.
Aaron?
I think this looks great to start, and I'm glad you were able to meet with everyone and get their, they're in there day to day. I think mostly everything's been covered, so thank you.
Okay, I have several to go in. So we have a lot of NICs in here, which are not in contract. So what does that mean exactly? Is that stuff we're not going to put in or stuff that could still be put in or
Yeah,
both?
All right. Yeah, Chris is starting on just page 24.
I'm on page 24. So
Yeah.
I look at, you brought up the microwave. Okay, well, the microwave is listed down there, dishwasher, appliances, there's not in the contract. So what, if we add those, all those things in, what does that do to change the price tag? That's first. Second, construction, we've got walls, doors, ceilings, finishes. That number seems really low. Are we taking the ceiling out and putting a new ceiling in? Are we putting something different into the walls? I just see that new construction to include ceiling. What does that mean? Are we taking the ceiling out, replacing ceiling? Same type of ceiling, new type of ceiling? All those. And then next or last, when we do the construction, how are we working to make sure we get our local contractors involved? If at all possible.
Becky, do you want to take addressing the NIC and the ceilings?
I can, yes. So this is a document we typically handle. So NIC oftentimes they're going to be not in contract, meaning it wasn't included in the scope of the work for this project. So certainly could be added in, should that be articulated as a need from the village. Some of the items that were specifically noted not in CBI scope, but there's a number on there, are identifying where the village would have a direct contract should they, as Todd mentioned, there was a proposal obtained for the security cameras. Those would not be provided by Creative. So that's a separate contract from us. So that's just a formality we have on our document. So that's what you're seeing there. The construction costs. So ceiling is more of a rework where we have new walls coming in and adjoining with the ceiling, reworking ceiling grids as needed. It is not a full replacement of the ceiling throughout the space.
Okay.
And as far as construction goes, I would suspect that this is going to require us to follow the state's public bidding law. And I don't think that allows us to limit to local only contracts. Although I know in bidding documents in the past, we have urged and encouraged, which I think is the extent to which we can state and remain within the public bidding law requirements. And looking to Renee and Bill and Brian here to tell me whether I'm on base with that.
Todd is right.
Oh, can you write that on a Post-it note for me?
Lastly, obviously we're getting bulletproof glass for the staff. I understand why we're not for the village board or the attorney, but we want to make sure, I'm kidding. Of course, this would be access to, this isn't bulletproof. If people want to get, my concern with what Joe was bringing up, even if you do this, it's not bulletproof. Somebody can get through those doors pretty easily because they're glass, and it could be right through this window. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not, it doesn't have to come through there, or however we can secure that best is what we want to make sure we focus to.
what I have seen done in municipal facilities, which maybe is worth talking about, Bill. When you have large panes of glass like this, the biggest threat is actually a vehicle. And we might want to talk about some bollards, or sometimes it's just concrete planters, or really heavy duty planters that can do the job of preventing some sort of vehicular entrance. So that's definitely worth looking at.
And our bid for this is 10,900 for,
Right, for the
And
next
work
scope
on-
of work. And
That's what we're
Becky,
really-
why don't you touch base on what the phase 2 design will deliver
Mhm.
for us and what we do next?
Mhm. Yeah, so it takes this from just truly the test fit of how is the space defined to further articulation of those walls that are new, how are they constructed? It details out if there's any sort of new millwork, it details out the finish schedule, it'll detail out any lighting changes, which creates a construction document set that would then be able to be issued for, again, that RFP process. And
And that,
it's
go ahead.
not-
And that's
yeah,
all.
it-
Yeah, that's all that's sought for approval tonight, is to authorize the village to engage CBI to complete that phase 2 plan development.
okay, I'm going to move to approve the phase 2 design proposal with CBI for Village Hall office remodeling and authorize staff to proceed with project bidding.
I will second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? Call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you.
All right, next we have approve resolution designating public depositories and authorizing withdrawal of Village of Waunakee deposits. I will be recusing myself from this and abstaining because my bank is listed that I work at. So Renee is probably going to introduce.
Yes, I will. So this is a formal procedure that we do every year. We just had a finance committee meeting at 5 o'clock, and they did do a motion to recommend that the board approve this resolution. Again, we took it off consent versus the other ones so that Chris could recuse himself. But our practice has been for the village to list every bank that has a branch within the village limits in this policy. Should we don't have accounts at every single bank at this point, but it gives us the ability, if we needed to or wanted to, open new accounts at any bank in the village. And then it also lists the local government investment pool where we have some money, and then the brokerage firms that both the village and the utility use. So again, the statute requires us to approve at least one depository, but we have many on this list just in case we need it. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution designating public depositories and authorizing withdrawal of Village of Waunakee deposits.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? And I abstain. Ayes have it. Okay,
Thank you.
next we have discuss. I'm in the wrong spot. All right. Discuss and take action on modifications to Village of Waunakee compensation strategy. Todd, or is this Carla? I don't know.
Yep, I'll take it. This is prepared for action tonight if the board is comfortable with the changes as proposed. I'll share though that I understand this is the first time you're seeing the changes. The changes are significant in terms of the philosophical approach to completing evaluations. If this is something that you want to take a couple of meetings on, that is okay with me. We're not we're not up against any sort of serious timing. I will share that under our current structure, the current process where employees do a self-eval and do the ranking and then the interaction with the departments for the follow-up meetings, that process would be kicking off here shortly. I've instructed department heads to pause that approach for now until I work towards finding out whether the board is comfortable with making this change that's proposed here tonight. So I'm going to, as I suggested in my memo, touch on the key elements of the compensation strategy that I'm proposing for change here. What you might think is a traditional annual evaluation process, something where an employee sits down, they've got different categories for which they get graded on. Everybody gives a number and that kind of spits out a score, and then that is computed in the system to tell them how much they will earn. That approach to evaluation has really fallen out of favor in private and public sector organizations. This change here is in reaction to that, and frankly, in reaction to the fact that since 2014, when we implemented our existing system, it really has fallen out of favor with those of us who use the system as well. Just simply not an effective tool to engage our staff and help them with developing and improving. So I've got about 5 little notes here that I'm going to zoom into, and I'll walk those through and then ask questions as we go. Page 38 in your packet, which is page 3 of the strategy. In that middle paragraph, it talks about one note in relation to the hiring of employees within our steps. So it says that in general, employees will be hired between step 1 and step 3, depending on their qualifications, and then administrative approval is required for new hires between step 2 and step 3. Village board approval required for hiring above step 3. Now, if you noted in the recruitment and retention strategy, what we've been experiencing is the need for a lot more flexibility in that initial recruitment step. So what I requested in here is a greater amount of discretion afforded to the village administrator in initial hiring decisions. Essentially, we'll maintain that we should attempt to hire at step 1 to 3, but it gives the village administrator authority to hire above step 3 up to step 7. I'll note that in total, there are how many total steps? 11 total steps to reaching the max. So should we suggest a hiring above step 7, between 7 and 11, that would still require board approval. So I want to note that as a substantial language change. The other change under responsibilities in the employees section, what used to be a regimented process that required calendar dates for completion of certain steps, like employee self-evaluation done by June 1, and then the human department head by another date. This instead talks about an ongoing process for feedback. In the least, for every employee supervisor relationship, there must be at least quarterly one-on-one feedback meetings where they sit down with specific discussion about performance and work environment and employee satisfaction and what we can do to help that employee be the best employee possible. So it doesn't keep department heads from doing more frequent meetings than quarterly, but at least quarterly for all staff. If you turn to page 39 of your packet, I want to note again, relating to the flexibility granted for the recruitment and retention strategy, I'm asking for administration authority to move a position up or down within a grade depending on changes in our marketplace. And we've already made a couple of those changes in relation to several positions, thanks to the recruitment and retention strategy that we have in place. This takes that allowance and builds it into our what would be an ongoing system flexibility for administration for those for position reviews. Flipping to page 41 of the packet. Now, what I highlighted here is that a circumstance where an employee might not get a raise in a given year would only be in a circumstance where an employee has been placed on a performance improvement plan. I'll share that since this system was put in place in 2014, we've only had one or two instances where an employee has been put on a plan. I'll tell you what usually happens is we hire great people, we work carefully with them, and we maintain great employees, and we've got a staff that's doing great things for us. And if they're not, as opposed to landing on a plan, there tends to, a lot of times the writing on the wall comes about, either noticed by the employee themselves or by the supervisors. And usually an employee or the village will make a decision to move an employee to a better place. But in some cases where we think improvement is possible, but a pause is appropriate on their wage increase to encourage that improvement, that's where the performance improvement plan would be implemented. Okay. If you go to page 43, that lays out some direction related to the quarterly one-on-one feedback sessions. It'll be imperative on administration to work carefully with all of our supervisors to train on how to make for effective feedback sessions. I'd add that once a year, we do ask supervisors and employees to review their job descriptions to make sure that they are in line with what they're currently doing. And I will add that we do have the ability and will be requiring that supervisors track these sessions, provide documentation within our NeoGov system so that we have record of the work and the conversations that we've had with employees. Obviously, that sort of documentation can be important when, let's say performance requires some improvement. We can track that and maintain appropriate records to manage our HR function effectively. I think the only thing I'll add is on page 50 of the packet, where we talk about placing employees into our system and allowing them to be eligible for a raise. That obviously changes because we don't have these multiple dates to be accomplished. What we maintain is that someone has to be employed at least 6 months to be eligible for a movement along their step. Now, I'll also add that for administrative purposes, to have all raises made effective on January 1 of each year is, Renee would do a flying elbow on me if we suggested doing it on anniversary years. It really is much easier to manage on a calendar year basis. Therefore, if an employee is initially hired at July 1st or after in any given year, they have to wait to the subsequent cycle to receive their step movement increase. So in some cases, it could be almost like a year and a half, although they would still receive the market-based adjustment that the board approves on an annual basis, the cost of living adjustment, I guess we call it. So those are what I had highlighted as some of the substantial notable changes. I know when speaking with my department head team about this as an approach, I kind of heard a collective sort of a cheer and a hooray, because as I said, we have really found limited utility to the existing system of performance evaluation that we've been using. And we'd like to make this adjustment. With that said, I'll stop, take any questions that you have. And if there are some things that require further research, we can put this on a subsequent meeting and continue our discussion that way.
Gary, any questions for Todd? Or comments?
I just like, see, we have to be more nimble and quick. If we want to hire good people and retain them, so I like the flexibility that there's, the administrator especially, and I think the interaction with staff, department heads, I think is a good step forward. So I would support it.
Joe?
Is this something that needs to be reviewed from a legal perspective? And has it been?
Yes, it has been reviewed by the village's labor attorney, Steve Zock.
Okay.
And Jared was participating in this process as well. He had a number of recommendations that were incorporated.
Okay, thank you.
Nyla?
The only thing I'm thinking about is, depending on when somebody is hired, waiting a year and a half for a raise seems to me to be a long time when there are I realize there's other companies out there that are providing raises much sooner. So that's the only comment I have.
It's worth talking about that. We can we can talk about either eliminating that as a provision. And the only risk there is you have an employee hired December 10th at one point and then immediately receiving a step after 1 month of service, which doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. In fact, it might be the type of thing we even discuss in negotiations with that potential employee as a element of their hire. Hey, you're going to be, accept this salary because you're going to be bumping up right away. The other option is to pick a different date than 6 months. Maybe it's 3 months. So again, I'm open to modification if you prefer that. I would note that they are eligible for that cost of living adjustment. So while they might not move the step after 1 year, they would get that, been doing 2.5% or 3%. That would still be something they receive.
Okay, Phil?
I think it's great, especially in today's market with people, they don't stick with jobs like we used to. We'd sign on, we're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna be here for 20, 30, 40 years. Today's employee doesn't do that. This gives us a lot more flexibility to keep pace with them. And as far as the 6 months or a year and a half, I think extraordinary circumstances, there's always some way we can figure to adjust to it. If we hire somebody and they turn out to be a diamond as opposed to just a regular type employee. So we have ways of recognizing that early.
Okay, so are you saying you're comfortable with the 6 month? Or
I'm comfortable with the 6 months because if we do find an exceptional employee, there's always a way we can figure out to work
that's
with
true,
that.
there is.
Brian, do you see any issues with that?
No.
Okay. Aaron?
I think it's a great idea to update this and stay relevant, current in 9 years. If it's not working, I'm sure it'll change again. But it seems really well researched and I appreciate all the external info that helps us get the perspective.
Okay, Sam?
I like the strategy that's been proposed here. My own human resources department at work has implemented a similar strategy, and I would say it's definitely helped with employee retention. And I think we could see the same benefits with this.
Okay. So I had written down a bunch of things and most of them are already stated here. Joe, thanks a lot for taking care of mine not having to be done. Todd, you mentioned that staff was saying yay to this. What were any negative potential comments that came back from staff, or were there none? Or challenges that they saw in this?
Yeah, good question. Renee or Jared, did anything come up as we were talking through some of the specifics?
I would just say for my point, the reason for the cheer has more to do with the staleness, I think, of what we had been doing and not getting a lot of utility out of our current process and that annual performance review and scoring system. And so I think this was universally seen as a major improvement and major step towards a progress and more flexibility, particularly with the frankly, one of the things that I was surprised by was the eagerness to go to the more frequent meetings with the employees. And I think that probably has a lot to do with the fact that we, at the department head level, we do that. We have regular meetings. And I think there's a great deal of value in that. So no, I do not recall any negative comments with the proposed plan as it is.
The joke was kind of like the annual evaluation process is copy and paste your prior years and then just change the adjectives that you used. I'm certainly oversimplifying how we use that, but it's how it felt certainly in our process.
So as you put this together, did you use other communities, or was there something you patterned it off of another community, or?
Yeah, I was actually at a conference later last year where the human resources director, and I'll give credit where credit is due, from River Falls, spoke about the recent adjustment that they were planning. And there were elements of this language. In fact, the one-on-one instructions on page 43 are largely taken from the New River Falls policy. But as I sat in that conference room, I looked around and I saw, city administrator sat up and started to take note because I think there was a lot of interest in moving in this direction from others.
Okay. Well, I think it's great, what you've put together, working with that. Mine were just trying to figure out, is there something we missed? Or is there something that's a glaring thing that somebody else may have brought up that didn't get addressed? I want to make sure those things would be, especially if it's from a manager that came out, that something may have been there. It sounds like there wasn't anything, so that's great. So is the board comfortable in making a motion tonight? So if somebody's comfortable, you can make the motion. Doesn't mean it's going to pass.
I just didn't know. Stafford, Todd wanted to look at that 1.5 process. There's no rush. If we could clarify that and then pick it up at the next meeting.
It's really a kind of a judgment call. What is a reasonable length of time to consider someone's performance to the point where you feel confident to say that they have done what they need to do to earn the reward of a merit adjustment? I guess to me, it feels like, a 6-month process is a reasonable time to make that determination. But with that said, I do get the point about, hey, if you're being hired July 1 and you're telling them upon hire that they're not eligible for this for 6 months, do we maybe lose out on a hire? To that, I would say, knowing the structure, if we left 6 months in, that would be an element in our negotiated discussion with the candidate to seek their employment. Maybe we'd start them at a higher point, a higher range than we otherwise would have, because we have knowledge of that time frame. In the least, that recruit would know going in the conditions of our system. Therefore, there's no surprise. So again,
So the question is really, are we giving you that flexibility to do that when you're hiring?
I believe we
Bottom
have
line.
that with this plan.
And if that's the case, we should be fine, because Todd's going to be making that judgment call. Everybody in agreement there?
I would ask, I guess, is there a reason? Is there something that forces that progression to happen? If somebody's hired December 1st, is there a forced reason to move them up a month later? Or is that just a call that you would make anyway? Are we tying your hands by saying it has to be 6 months?
So what I think I'm getting at, Joe, is that person comes in December. Todd actually has the ability at that point, if he wants that person, and they might be a little apart on money, to say, I'm going to put you here to start with.
Sure.
And then they're going through their next year before they get anything, but he has that flexibility to get that done in that last month is what we're getting at.
Sure. But
Purely based on that individual. It could be another individual where he's like, it's going to be a year before that takes place.
But the other side of that would be they're hired December 1st. There's nothing, I don't think, that says that we have to move them to that next step. So.
Correct. In fact, our default would be that they don't move.
Yeah.
And that's part of his negotiation.
Yeah, but I would share, and there's several department heads here, I would share that we've had those, even under the current policy, we've had those types of discussions as we work with a new candidate. I think this sort of cements that as the approach that we would be taking. I don't think there's hesitation from the existing department heads here that were limited or constrained with this proposed language. And I'm speaking for them. They're at liberty to share otherwise, but we've been creative in our approaches when need be.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed edits. Make effective immediately the revised village Waunakee conservation strategy.
Okay, we have a motion by Gary Hertzberg,
I'll second.
second by Sam Kaufman. Any other comments? In turning your mics to green, I will call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, thanks for that good discussion. All right, next we have item number 4, discuss and take action on possible land swap with Durst property owners for recreational trail including consideration and action on cost sharing agreement. I don't know that we're going into closed.
I think at a staff level, we are prepared to have this discussion in open session. Obviously, if certain questions come up, we have the ability to convene and closed if you want to, but we would be ready to move forward right now.
Perfect.
So just to kind of bring you in, and the staff memo covers this in part. This item has been, I guess maybe the next page. This item has been before you before. We have received appraisals. Todd just put a map up on the property that kind of generally describes if we're going to go ahead with this land swap. If you look kind of at the middle of the page, there's purple that's 3.67 acres. That's land that if we ultimately did this, the village would acquire for purposes of the recreational trail. The tan property down at the bottom right, the 5.26, that's ultimately what we would need, what we would convey over to the Dursts. Now, there's two main steps that I would call that do not require governmental, or steps that don't involve the governmental approvals that would need to happen. And that's kind of the purpose for the cost sharing agreement. We need to get a surveyor who can put together a legal descriptions for the lands that would be swapped, and probably some maps. And then we're going to have to work with title insurance, because to the extent that the village would be acquiring property, I would want to make sure that we review the title work to make sure it's appropriate. You know, when you look at the recommended motion on page 56 of your packet, I mean, it's kind of, there's a caveat. If the board wants to move forward with the acquisition of the property, then we have a recommended motion. If you don't, then, you know, clearly you wouldn't want to do this. I would say, you know, a couple of points. If we move forward with the cost sharing agreement, that does not require you to ultimately approve the land swap. It's simply a step in the process. Even if we get to the point where we do the land swap in the future, you still don't have to build the trail right away. All you would be doing would be acquiring land that ultimately could be used for a trail in the future. To that end, I know we've talked about this before. I know we're not enthusiastic about the fact that somebody put a fence on our property. There is the potential that this becomes an opportunity. There in the state statutes, we are not allowed to condemn land for recreational trails. Just this past month, that section of the statutes was applied to the village of Egg Harbor, which is up in Door County, and they were not even allowed to condemn land for a sidewalk under this statutory provision. So it is, you know, it is the law that the only way for us to get land for a recreational trail, whether now or if the law doesn't change in the future, is through a negotiated settlement with the property owner. And again, you know, if you're inclined to move forward with this, this is a situation where you really, you know, you potentially have the ability to swap land that, my understanding, while we own it right now, is not necessarily utilized because there's access issues for our residents to get to this. And maybe you have the ability to set a village board up in the future to build a trail that people, you know, obviously at that point in time, there would be a determination that they want. But again, approving the cost sharing agreement does not even mean that you have to ultimately acquire the property. It simply means that we would take the next steps, working with the a surveying company and working with a title company to get all the underlying information that we need. If this ultimately is going to move forward, there was a part of the packet, pages 65 and 66. I have had some discussions with the attorney for the property owner about what we would want. I mean, ultimately, if we acquired the property, my assumption is we would want to bring it into the village. And so we would want to annex the land. I have been told by the property owner that if we do this land swap, that they ultimately will want to take their land is currently in the town of Westport. They would want to detach the land that they would acquire here and have it moved into the town of Westport. That's something that would require village board approval and town board approval. And so there's a lot of different steps that would still need to be taken for this to happen, but we don't take any steps unless we, you know, approve the cost sharing agreement so that we can split these costs. And I'm certainly here to answer any questions that you have about the processes or the agreement itself.
Questions? Everybody's quiet. So
I mean, I just think it's a great opportunity.
and I know Sue's in the audience and Bill's, and this came up 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was, and it went with a no. I don't like that the property owner did what they did. very clear that they just took land for their own usage. And if I had my druthers, I'd just say, knock it down, take it off. But this opportunity has presented itself that we can get an opportunity to connect a trailway to our conservancy, open that conservancy up for more people to use. This also would connect all the way out to Governor Nelson's through the paths that are existing into a beautiful area along our creeks, and there's woods into our conservancy. So I think this is not a cheap adventure as you're going through putting this type of trail in. But it does give an opportunity for a beautiful spot in Waunakee. Not exactly like it, but I believe the trail by our library right now along the creek is a beautiful and heavily used trail that we've put in. I think this flows with that. We saw it 20 years ago that this would be a great spot to have a trail go through. It just didn't work with the property owner at that time. This has now provided that opportunity. If they choose not to enter into this, I think our next step would be to send Bill in to have the conversation about when we're going to be taking down the fences that they're going to pay for. So am I overstating that, Brian?
No, I mean, we would pursue a trespass process against the property owner if this is not something that's going to happen. And I believe that the village has a strong case on that. I don't believe that there's an adverse possession claim against the village. And so, and obviously the village can do that if it wants to do that. I think this is more about everything that you just said. If the village board wants to do it, is more about the potential opportunity to have the trail.
And this might be 5 years. This could be 10 years before the
20.
funding is there. It could be 20. Hopefully we're still alive at that point and we get to see the beauty of this. But yeah, I'm fully in Gary's court or to move forward. It gives us the opportunity. It doesn't require or force the board in the future. It's land that frankly we can't get to or access anyway. So it's not really of use to us. The portion that they've already taken part of. So I'm of the opinion that we approve this, but I want everybody else's opinions on that as well. Nyla?
Okay, I keep thinking back to the presentation that Kent Strauss did. And there were so many ifs, buts, maybes. The cost is very high. And perhaps Madison Metropolitan Sewer District would help with cost. That's a maybe. My question is, would Westport be involved in this? Would the county be involved in this? And as much as I like trails and wildlife and nature, this project has so many ifs, buts, ands, and the cost is so high. It's really hard for me to support it.
Anyone else?
I would agree with the idea of, getting your ducks in a row before you get to the path stage. It's still, I could feel it in my gut, it doesn't sit right, that I guess rewarding encroachment would be, the best way to describe it. What I do like about it is that, that bank is publicly owned now. That is the low side of the bank. That means my workers can pile wood there and Bill can haul it out and we don't have to. So I'm a little torn at this point, weighing the pros and the cons.
Okay. Joe, any feelings?
I think Sam definitely said it well. Yeah, it doesn't sit right, but at the same time, I think this is an opportunity that ultimately, at least at this stage, we need to move forward with.
Aaron?
Yeah, I don't love how this came to be, but I think, as everyone said, it's a opportunity for us to, maybe pivot and put aside our feelings for the greater good of what could be a really neat outdoor recreation connector for us. And yeah, not sure if trail will ever happen, but I think we could secure, one more step towards that. It's not going to be the 7 of us, but a board and a community in the future that would really be able to utilize it. I think it's a really important spot right there that would be better utilized. So
Okay, Phil?
I think it's a wonderful idea to work towards creating the trail. It'll give us the public access to this creek area, which is kind of nice. It can be a lot nicer once we get in there and take the natural stuff that's falling in there. Get teams in there to thin the woods, maybe get the dead limbs out, etc. We can make it a whole lot better if we have access to it. But right now, we don't have the access. And as it is right now, we have a lot of people that park over behind, way behind the utility station that's across the tracks by Mary. And they hike back in there and down towards Westport. So I know a few people that are already using it, but that would love it. And I myself, if I'm still around and bicycling, I can park my bike and walk it. I love it.
So the biggest question, as far as I'm concerned, is if we're going to do this, and I'm going to shoot Bill, I know you're not, I'm not going to shoot you. I'm just going to ask you a question because it's important. What can we do as a village right now on the brown section that we're going to be giving up? What could we do in there? With no access.
That's just it. I mean, we're very limited on access on getting back there with any kind of equipment or anything at all without working something out with maybe with ATC. I think it's got their power lines through there, or Madison Met, but even still, you know, those are limited access. So yeah, we would be hard pressed to get anything to do much back there.
So what we would be giving up is land that we really can't do anything with for land that we potentially might do something with, that we could put a trail on. Is that fair to say?
Correct, yeah.
So that's the basis for this. And the future boards, parks, all the people that want to do this, they're going to make a decision on when, if it's appropriate that we do it. But to me, we're giving something up. Yeah. But are we really doing anything with it? No. Do we have the ability to do anything with it? No. When they did the pricing of the two different properties to swap it, we had to stay within the rules with DNR, correct?
If everything that we've done to date right now has been approved by the DNR, and if we complete the land swap, it will have to be approved by the DNR.
Yes.
And the only thing that I would add is just, I think it would be surprising if we were able to utilize either of the ATC or MMSD easements to get access to this property. The way those easements are typically drafted are limited to the party that holds the easement and for the purposes that they have the easement. So for ATC, it's transmission line. For MMSD, it's sanitary sewer services. I do not believe that they would have the ability to allow us, the village, to get access to the property through their easement. I mean, I don't know that 100% sure, but it would be very surprising if the easement was that broad.
Okay, now that you want some.
I just would like to make a comment is if this goes through, as soon as it goes through, I would like to see an 8-foot privacy fence, which may need a variance, put between the two properties so that for safety, so that when the park starts being used, we don't have problems with a child trying to pet a horse and perhaps getting in trouble. Also, so that we never have to go through this again with possible encroachment. I think it's sad that we've had to go through this at this time, and I would like to prevent any questions in the future.
Here. Motion to the cost sharing agreement between the village and the Bears. Authorize village staff to take steps consistent with the cost sharing agreement.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Ayes have it. Okay. Next, we have discuss terms and conditions related to possible annexation agreement for 40 acres adjacent to Waunakee Intermediate School on Woodland Drive, aka Becker Jack property. Are we going to close on this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I do see that Don and Jerry are here. I don't know if you want to have them comment or if they want to comment, but my intent is just to go into close, for my discussion with you all on these two different terms is to go into closed session.
Do you guys have any comments you'd like to make to the board? before we go? No, no, okay. So I could read.
Yep.
The village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.851E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business. Whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, the village board may reconvene in open session and discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session. So I'd look for a motion.
Motion to go into closed session.
Motion by Gary Hertzberg,
Second.
second by Sam Kaufman. Roll call vote, please.
I'm sorry, who made the second?
Gary and
Thank you.
Sam.
Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Gary Hersberg,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Joe Zisselsberger,
Yes.
Sam Kaufman.
Yes. And do we anticipate we're gonna have anything that to come out into open session? For public
No.
if they want to stay? No,
No.
we should be okay. Okay.
And I would note for purposes of the recording, we're going to end the recording now. So those who are watching, if there by chance is any action taken in open session, that would be reflected in the official minutes from the meeting.